Reddit. What is your most disturbing, scary, or creepy real story? Story 1. I was 17 and had just gotten my license. Back in high school, my friends and I had made it a mission to find abandoned houses to throw parties in. We had a few good candidates, but the motherlode was this house I would pass on my home from work. It was an undeveloped shell of a huge home with a large property in the back. I had told one of my friends about it, and one day before we went to see a movie, I took him to the house. It was about dusk in summer, so I had my headlights on. I pulled into the front of the house, and we were there for like 10 seconds tops before we pulled back to go to the main road. A minute later, this big truck pulls up behind us with its high beams on and riding our ass. My friend and I took note of it, but paid it no mind as we headed back to the main road. At the light, I turned right, but the truck cut through the gas station at the corner and blocked us off. Out of the truck comes this big hulk of a man, and my friend and I are shitting our pants. He raps on the window and rolls it down. Now, the freaky part is that this is a busy road and now there is no one in sight. He asked us what we were doing at the house, and I quickly lied and said we were making a ute. He stares at us for a few seconds, smiles, and sends us on our way. To this day, the house remains unfinished, and I'm convinced it's a drug operation of some sort. Story 2. Woke up clock says 3:34 a.m. I'm 17 and in my bedroom. It's pitch black, but I hear some rattling downstairs. Terrified, I quietly tiptoe to my parents' room. Weird, it's empty. Where are my parents? I go upstairs to my brother's room. He's usually awake all night, but while the light is on, no one is in the room. So I guess whatever those noises are downstairs, it must be them. Why are they awake? Maybe someone died. I go downstairs. In the middle of my living room is what looks like two men stealing our TV. No one else is in sight. I run upstairs as quietly as possible, shut and lock my door. Suddenly there's banging on the door. I woke up. It was a dream and the relief washes over me. I look over at the clock. Weird coincidence. It's 3:34. I'm shaking, but decide to go downstairs to prove to myself that everything's fine. I go downstairs. The two men are in my kitchen screaming at my parents and brother. I run upstairs to my bedroom and lock the door. 10 seconds later, I hear banging and woke up. It's 3:34 this time. I had actually woken up and I didn't manage to fall back asleep for about 36 hours. I spent most of my teens and early 20s as a lucid dreamer, discovering the techniques after a childhood plagued by very frightening sleep paralysis. I found a message board back in 1998 where I learned to at least have fun with it. The above story wasn't a sleep paralysis experience, but it was typical of the kinds of nightmares I used to have. Weirdly enough, I rarely have nested dreams anymore and haven't had a successful attempt at lucid dreaming in a few years. My guess is that it has something to do with hormones. Story 3. Last December, a little before Christmas, my friend and I were driving home after our final exam. There's a red light at a major intersection up ahead, and I begin to slow down. I came to a complete stop in the right sidewalk lane of a 4-lane street, two each direction, facing southbound with 6 cars in front of me, and I was stopped with a side street to my right. Suddenly, I hear tires screeching and a crash. I got hit rear, right of my car by another driver. We get out, exchange information, and begin to take pictures of our respective vehicles. I look up the street to make sure I have a few hundred meters between myself and any vehicles approaching from the north before I step into the left southbound lane so I can get a picture showing the angle of both of our cars and the street signs, which are rear, right northwest intersection of the side street. My friend calls me over to unlock the trunk so he can get paper from his pack to write down his witness statement, and just as I step back into the right lane, my car occupies. A northbound driver who was so occupied with observing our collision drifts into the left southbound lane, which just stood in and missed me by about a foot. He was traveling probably about 70, coming, that's a 43. 2 days later, I go paintballing with the aforementioned friend and a few others. In between games, you go into the lobby with your mask off, and everyone is supposed to put their paintball marker, gun, on safe and have a barrel cover over the muzzle. I'm leaning against the wall in the lobby when a previous friend asks if he can borrow money to buy more paint. My back is still leaning against the wall, but I lean to the right to hand him my wallet. As I put it in his hand, I hear a loud splat against the whale I'm on. I look to find a paintball fired at where my head eyes should have been had I not moved. Somehow, one of the kids across the room was putting his marker down on a table and the barrel cover's retention bungee snapped, allowing the cover to fall off. The safety broke and the marker fired a ramp. A paintball to the eye at 250ths could have been a game changer, to say the least. 2 days later, I was out drinking with my friends and went paintball with me and some others. We're walking down a major street, and I'm naturally a fast walker, so every 25 meters I'm stopping, turning back, and waiting for everyone to catch up. At one point, I look back and see everyone is still pretty far back, but it's cold, and we're practically at our destination. So instead of stopping to wait, I decide to just keep walking ahead. Then, for some reason, I decide to stop and shout back to them, I'll meet them inside. Just as I do so, I hear a loud engine roaring up the street and turn to see a speeding Porsche Tandem in front of me hit the west wall of a building, literally at a right angle so hard that more than half of his engine compartment caved in, his airbags deployed, and the windows all shattered. Had I kept walking without saying anything to my friends, I probably would have been between the car and the building. 2 days later, it's Boxing Day morning. I was in and out a few times throughout the night because I was excited to go pick up some items with my friend, the same one from the collision paintball night out. At one point through the night, I have a nightmare of sorts. The earliest part of the dream can remember me leaping out of a panel door van with a rope in my hand. I have no idea why, but in the dream my mind knows that someone is trying to kill me. As my feet hit the ground to find myself in my driveway, I run inside the house and for some reason tie the rope to the front door's doorknob, knowing that on the other end of the OP is the killer tied to it. I lock and barricade all of the doors and windows to the house and call 911. The operator tells me every officer is busy with something and no one can come help me. I hang up the phone and am about to call someone else when I notice the rope has been cut. Trying to stay silent and listen for the killer, I suddenly notice everything that can possibly make sound in the house is given, sir. Kettle, stove fan, toilet, shower, TV, radio, everything. I look up at the top of the stairs and see someone's foot hit the first step and start walking downstairs. I wake up screaming and sweating, and the first words out of my mouth before I can even think to process it as a dream are, Slender Man. Story 4. One night when I was 13 years old, I had gotten my period for the first time and ended up sleeping on my back. I am an avid side sleeper, so this is a really weird position for me. I was dreaming, and in that dream, I was sitting in a chair. I leaned it back on its back legs, and suddenly the chair started to slowly lean further and further back until I drifted into the eternity below me. This freaked me out, and I jolted awake. When I woke up, there was a figure hovering directly above my face, and all I saw was a hooded white, flat ovular and relatively featureless face with big, ovular, glassy eyes and an expression like it was determined to devour my eternal soul. The face was humanoid, very two-dimensional with thin, quivering, angry lips and two holes where its nose would be, with eyebrows arched high up onto its forehead. I could feel an unworldly hate burning right through me as it loomed over me. It was absolutely the most helpless I have ever felt and would ever feel, because it was more than just my life or what was at stake. I tried to move, scream, breathe, anything, and couldn't. It was paralyzing me with its hate. I finally was able to let out the tiniest whimper, and as soon as the sound escaped me, it stood straight up and paced back and forth at the foot of my bed, still staring. It was like a force field was erected around me, and the frustration of it trying to get at me again was radiating throughout the room. It looked like a starving tiger behind glass, longing to lunge at its vulnerable prey, if only it weren't for the barrier between us. It was tall, almost all the way to the ceiling tall and very thin, wearing a long black cloak that covered everything except that terrifying face. I realized that it hadn't been floating over me. It had stood at the foot of my bed and leaned over it to hover its face over mine. I sat up in my bed, still frozen, just staring at it. My closet door behind it was cracked a few inches, and it swooped in there and peered out at me, never having broken eye contact. It continued to stare, quivering hate and frustration until it slowly faded away. I turned my light on and it stayed on at night for a long time. I never slept with that closet door open again, and I didn't sleep again that night. I stayed the night in the living room with all of the lights on, just sitting on the couch. I later dismissed it as sleep paralysis for several years. It was a very believable and plausible explanation. Then I became friends with a girl who confided in me and told me a story. She was up late at night by herself with her door open. Something out in the living room by the kitchen caught her eye. When she looked at it, she saw a figure standing there, beckoning her to approach it. She looked away, refocused on it, and it was still there. When she described it, she described the exact same creature that had attacked me. We each got a sketchbook and drew what we saw, and when she showed me hers, I was staring at my attacker all over again. She had never heard my story before telling hers. Story 5. This is not supernaturally creepy, but is one of the more disturbing and surreal experiences of my life. One early morning a few short years ago, I was walking to my bus stop and eating a banana. It is dark, misty, around 5 am, and I am internally debating something trivial, like if I want my daily Starbucks before or after the commute. As I approach the dimly lit corner on my street, a tall man in a black mask steps out of the dark alleyway to my left. Sleepy and disoriented, I barely acknowledge him. When he shouts, "Put down your fucking purse," and points his gun to my head, things start to click. The man says, "Put down your bags." And okay, I'm putting them down over here. He orders me to walk over to him, toward the alley, and get down on the fucking ground, and I agree, I'm coming, okay. My heart is beating a million miles a minute and my hands still smell sticky with bananas. I know I need to get away. I don't know why, but my mouth won't stop working. Look, see, I'm on the ground. My stuff is over there. Please just take my stuff, but he doesn't like it. Shut the fuck up. Okay, he gets on top of me and puts the gun to my head. At this point, I should mention the fact that I'm on my way to coach a high school practice and I'm dressed like a dude. Huge baggy pants, hat jacket. If not for my telltale voice, I'd look like a prepubescent 90s rap star. Anyway, as the guy gets on top of me, gun to my head, he looks at me and pauses. I can't tell you why I know this, but I swear that at this moment, it clicks for him that I'm a woman. He gets off of me, stands up and points to the dark alley. Come with me. My stomach hurts. I remember that there has been a recent rash of sexual assaults in my neighborhood, during the daytime no less. When the man points down the dirty alleyway, my internal voice speaks the fuck up, says, "Voice one, there was no way in hell you were going to go down there without a fight. But he has a gun, you dipshit," replies voice two. "Fucking follow me," the real voice, his voice hollers. So I do what I do best. I talk. I'm coming. I'm following you, I call. And the man makes a crucial mistake. He believes me. I take 2 tiny steps backwards toward the sidewalk, and he turns his body and his gun toward the alley. This is my moment. I take a deep breath, tuck my head down in case he starts shooting and starts sprinting away. I hear a voice screaming in a high-pitched wail before I realize that it's mine. After running 6 or 7 blocks, I head back to my apartment, hoping he's not there to see where I lived. The police check out the alleyway an hour later, but the potential attacker is long gone. The only evidence of the encounter is my banana peel browning in the alleyway and the adrenaline rush that I couldn't shake for days. I would be lying if I said that if that experience doesn't bother me still. But I'm so fortunate to mainly be haunted by the what-ifs and not the what-dids. Story 6. When we first moved into the house we grew up in, we used to hear things calling my name from the opposite end of the house. Like, I would be in my room playing with Legos or something, and I would hear my dad call my name from his room. So I'd go to my parents' bedroom and ask them what they wanted, and they'd always tell me that they never called my name. Being a little kid, I honestly started to think that they were playing a joke on me because this happened about once every couple of days. Well, one night it happened and I went to ask them what they wanted, like always. But right as I stepped into their room, I heard my mom's voice calling for me from the living room, which is all the way on the other side of the house. It was at that exact point that I knew no one was tricking me because I was looking at both of my parents sitting in front of me. I kind of kept this to myself until my brother was diagnosed with partial narcolepsy. One of the symptoms of narcolepsy is apparently oral hallucination, so I thought maybe I had it too. Went and got myself checked, completely fine. So I have no idea what was calling my name all those years, and I still hear it at night whenever I come visit and stay over. Story 7. When I was in nursing school long ago, there was a lady that did not want to be resuscitated by all means. Later, she became altered and her family gained power over her. They changed her code status from doctor to full code, even though that was not their mother's wishes. Since they had a power attorney over her, we had to follow the children's wishes. The lady went into V-fib with no pulse or breathing. We started key peer to the code chart and arrived at the bedside. The doctor went to administer a shock, but the machine failed. He tried again and again. The machine would not deliver the shock. The minute she passed on, the machine worked. The hospital checks the defibrillator daily and it not working has ever happened before. In the end, the lady ended up getting her wish of no resuscitation. Everyone was freaked out over this. I've been a nurse for 20 years and never seen this happen before. Story 8. When I was a child, I lived in an old Victorian house and I would always hear laughing while I was trying to sleep. I was an only child with a single mother, and when I was about 5, 6, I would wake up hearing laughter in the hallway in the middle of the night. After mentioning this to my mom, she swore it was probably just the TV being left on late. One night I awoke hearing the laughter in my room. I went to sit up but felt like there was someone holding my shoulders down, invisible hands gripping into my shoulders while I heard laughing. I creamed my little heart out. My mom ran into my room, flicking on the bedside lamp, convincing me it was just a dream, until it said put my shoulders hurt. She lifted up my t-shirt and there were 2 adult-sized handprints on my shoulder. I honestly thought I had imagined it and that it had never happened, but the other day I mentioned it in passing to my mom and she went blanket white and said, "Don't want to remember that." Story 9. When I was about 7, my 2 brothers and I were playing in an area that was used as an unofficial motocross place. We decided to dig a tunnel for some reason. Being the extra smart guys we were, it took a few hours to dig about 6 feet and 2 feet high. I was right up at the face when suddenly the tunnel collapsed. It was all dirt with no support. My world went instantly black and hot by hot. Furnace hot. I couldn't move a muscle from the weight of the soil completely enclosing me. I started to really panic, as you do. Everything started turning red, which I guess was blood being forced into my head. Every breath was getting harder as the soil constrained me more and more. Even though my hands were near my face, I couldn't move my arms to clear the dirt around my head and also started breathing in dirt, which made me cough, which made me contract my stomach, and then I couldn't draw breath at all. This isn't what made me panic, though. The total darkness turning red with the incredible heat made my young mind think I was going to hell. I don't know how long I was buried for, but it seemed like an eternity. Suddenly, I felt something grab one of my feet. My brothers had been frantically digging through the collapse to pull me out and managed to reach me and then pull me out. We never told my parents. It just went home and got hosed down. Story 10. So growing up, my sister had an imaginary friend. She said she was an older lady and she was nice and her name was E. She talked to her and played with her, all that jazz, until she was probably 4 or so, and then it stopped. Fast forward to when my sister was about 10. My mom isn't home. She got a call to go to the nursing home for a GPS, so she bolts with Pops. My sister and I shared a room at the time, and she was in there doing whatever, and I was on the other end of the house. All of a sudden, I hear the radio in our room click on, turn all the way up, turn all the way down, and go off. This happened like 3 times, so I go in there to be all like, what the hell? The kid knocks it off, and she's sitting in our room just white as a ghost. I go over to the radio to unplug it. No plug, no plug, no batteries, only radio in the house. I looked at her and she said I saw her, it was E. So I called Mom freaking out and Mom was so upset. Apparently Grandpa had just passed away. Okay, weird, I drop incident, whatever. A few days later at the funeral, a relative comes up to us and gives us a pic she found. My sister says, hey, it was a picture of my grandparents when they got married. My grandmother died before I was even thought of when my mom was 11. We live in the home my mom grew up in. We have no pictures of her at all, as my step-grandmother got rid of them all when she moved into the house a few years after mom's death.